الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على سيد الخلق وأشرف المرسلين، سيد الأولين والآخرين، سيدنا وحبيبنا وعظيمنا وشفيعنا وقائدنا محمد، وعلى آله وصحبه ومن استنى بسنته وسار على نهجه إلى يوم الدين، وارض اللهم عنا معهم، اللهم آمين. اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا، وأنت تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. We started speaking about the sifat that have no opposites last time. We mentioned that there are 6 main ones that we are going to go through. We listed them, alhamdulillah, and we spoke extensively about one in particular, ألا وهي القلقلة, the most commonly known and explained صفة in Tajweed. This letter is being قلت بجد, and then we discussed the different strengths of qalqala, and we discussed these letters obviously. فإنشاءالله ta'ala now we'll be moving swiftly on with the rest of the sifat, with the aim being that we finish the topic of characteristics of the letters before Ramadan inshallah ta'ala. طيب. The next sifa we are to discuss inshallah ta'ala is that of Safir. Safir literally means whistling. And from a practical perspective, it is when the air is projected from a particular exit point, such that there is an element of whistling in the sound that is produced. These letters are 3, and we mentioned them briefly when we discussed makharij, because they all come from the same makhraj, but the different sifat. What unites those 3 are the sifa of Safir. So they are Sad, Sin, Z. So those are the letters of Safir. As you can see, or as I'm going to try to demonstrate at least, if you are to pronounce each letter with the sukun case, there will be an element of whistling in the final sound. So as, they all come from the same makhraj. Obviously, that which makes them distinct from one another are the sifat. So, for example, the sad has isti'la and itbaq, the sin has istifal and infitah, the zay has istifal but does not have hams like the sin and the sad, and has jahr instead. So that's why they're all different. But in terms of makhraj, they're all very similar. If you recall, when we're discussing the exit point of the tip of the tongue. على كل حال, what unites all 3 of them, as well as the makhraj, is the sifa of Safir. It really is just as simple as that. So it's not just hams, it is almost a very particular type of hams. You can think of it that way. So it's not just or it is a very particular and sharp type of hams, where the air is not just exited from the mouth, but is projected. Yeah, that's a good way to put it, that the air is projected from the mouth. So once again, as, sa, si, su, sa, si, su, za, zi, zu. As is always the case, the sifa is most enhanced and most obvious when the letter has sukun, which is why we always start with sukun, just to make the point clear. but it still exists in the other cases. فتحة ضمة and كسر. And it's really just as simple as that, nothing more, nothing less. So we'll move on from that. Hopefully that's nice and clear, nothing too complex. The following two characteristics only apply to one letter. Not the same letter for both, but one letter each. فاستطالة. استطالة is, I guess, the characteristic. Just like the makhraj of the dad is the makhraj to overwhelm all other makharij, the istitala is the articulation, afwan, is the characteristic which very held in very high regard in terms of difficulty. But it's not difficult at all, inshallah ta'ala, even though there are often two camps, those of ifrat and tafrid, those who go in excess in terms of how to apply it, and those who don't do it as it ought to be done. Istitala literally is stretching out of a sound. طول is length. So istitala is stretching out of that particular length. From a practical perspective, it is just that. It is the stretching out of the sound of the bond. The only letter, as we just said, is obviously the bond. طيب. There are two main things or two main factors which must be explained in hand with each other to holistically understand istitala. As I'm hopeful all of you are aware, because we all discussed it in makharij, the makhraj of the dad is the side of the tongue. That is where the pressure is placed. However, all of the side of the tongue rather, is in contact with the sides of the teeth, or the gums to be specific. To give a top view of that image, and you have done so before, but we'll do it again anyway. So these are the teeth, and these are the gums. The side of the tongue, and only the side, is in contact with all the litha of the top half of the mouth, of the hanak al-a'la. There is hollowness in the middle though. So from a side view, the tongue will be somewhat, there will be air here. If these are teeth here and teeth here, obviously this side would be touching as well. But the point is, there would be a sound or air that is being exited from the throat out, but being trapped by the tongue. And this is the really first point that you must keep in mind, is that the sound is being trapped. It is not allowed to exit. And as soon as you allow the sound to exit in the dad with the sukoon, then you can be pretty confident that the sound has been corrupted from the original dad. So as soon as I say Allah, that escape of the sound changed the dad into Allah and made the pressure of the sound from the tip of the tongue as opposed to the side of the tongue. So just to reiterate, number one, what is happening, the sound is being trapped. It is that trapping of the sound, along with something else we're about to discuss now, inshallah, that allows this istitala or stretchiness of the sound to take place.
So if this is the throat, obviously this is a top-down view. If the sound is in between the tongue and the top of the mouth, it is not allowed to exit because all the sides of the tongue are in contact with the gums of the top half of the mouth. طيب. Number one, the sound is not being allowed to exit or escape. Number two, which is directly related. Often, if I've been saying side of the gums, it's really the teeth, the molar teeth in particular. It's not really the gums here. It is here where perhaps the contact would be in gums, but in terms of the side of the tongue, it would be in contact with the molar teeth, not the gums. على كل حال, that's just technicality in case I made a mistake. That trapping of the sound, that heightened pressure between the top of the mouth and the tongue, creates a very slight and subtle sliding of the tongue along the molar teeth, along the makhraj. So that trapping of sound causes a heightened pressure in your mouth, which then causes a very subtle and slight sliding of the tongue over its makhraj, over the side molar teeth. The end product, if we take the sukun case, will therefore be you can hear that sound, that almost buzzing sound that takes place. If it's just that's a dad from the correct makhraj without istitala. So it's not a perfect dad yet. But a dad from the correct makhraj with istitala would sound like some have described it as the buzzing of bees, the sound of buzzing of bees, or others, if you want a more graphic and example that will stick in your mind, think of the sound that someone would make just before they throw up. That is the sound of istitala. طيب. Istitala, as we just said, would be most pronounced in the sukun case, and it nonetheless exists in the fatha, dhamma, and kasra. Where it would be most obvious would be in the shadda. So if you take al-Fatiha, so this dad is actually pronounced, so the dads in this word is a dad with sukun, not just a dad with sukun, plus a dad with a fatha. So this is why the istitala is incredibly pronounced in this word in Fatiha, which is often where most of a student's effort should be to master istitala, should be in that word in Fatiha. Number one, because Fatiha, so automatically it's the most important and the greatest surah in the Quran. And second, it's a very good example to take here. So, you see that? So the sound doesn't stop and then start again. It's not it's not that. It's not it's continuous and it's stretched. It's the part. Yeah? Hopefully that's clear. So just to summarize very quickly, two main points, two main phenomena taking place to perfectly have istitala. Number one, the sound is trapped. It is not allowed to exit. If it does exit, there's a problem. The dad is not correct. So because the sound is trapped, there is a pressure in the mouth between the tongue and top of the palate, top palate, which causes a slight, very subtle sliding of the tongue across its makhraj, and millimeters, if that. Yeah. So don't think that it must be like really extreme sliding, which some people do. They end up with the tip of their tongue outside their mouth. That's extreme. That's too much, and it's not the correct istitala. So those are two main points: trapping of the sound and the sliding of the tongue. Common mistakes with istitala, as the one we just mentioned, the tip of the tongue going outside. So someone will start and do this by the end of it. So they end up with the tongue outside their mouth because they think that the sliding of the tongue, that's how it should be, which is obviously completely incorrect. Another thing that some people do is that they literally trap air at the side of their cheeks. So if you see them pronounce a word, they'll end up with like a bubble of air between the cheek and the molar teeth, and then they let that air go. That's incorrect. That will end up giving the blood hams, if anything else. That excessive air, which is jolted out of the mouth or projected out of the mouth, will give the blood hams, and obviously blood does not have hams. And as you can see, the cheeks are very relaxed. It's nothing to do with the cheeks. It's just the sound is not trapped between the cheeks and the molar teeth. It's between the tongue itself and the top of the mouth. The pressure all the while being on the side of the tongue. That's the makhraj. But we're talking about the sifa now. So it would not be walal, anything like that. It's not nothing to do with any air on the side of the mouth. It's just to do with the air that's trapped between the tongue itself and the top of the mouth. So walal, hopefully that's clear. One final mistake, which is more to do with makhraj than it is to do with the sifa, is that some people think that istitala means changing the blood sound to Allah sound. So just to give that continuation and that stretchiness to the blood sound, they make it Allah. So walad, which is once again completely incorrect. If anything, a major mistake. That's pretty much everything to mention about istitala. And it really is not as complicated as people make out to be. What it takes is practice. A lot of listening, a lot of repetition in front of your teacher until they approve it for you, inshallah. طيب, next up, تفشي إن شاء الله. تفشي. As you can guess from the sound, it has something to do with the sheen. And indeed, that is the case. The sheen is the only letter that has tafashi. Tafashi, from a practical perspective, from a practical tajweed perspective, and that's the one you're interested in, is the spreading of the sound throughout the mouth. So with other sifat, let's take Safir because we just discussed it. The sound is very compressed or very is only comparted into a particular part of the mouth. So with the Safir, the sound is projected. The air is projected rather into a very particular direction. It's not general. With istitala, as also we just discussed it, the sound is trapped. It does not spread throughout the mouth. It is only between, when it's trapped, between the tongue and the top of the mouth. And the same throughout other sifat. With the sheen, as you can straight away see, the sound is very much spreading out throughout the entire mouth. It has an original point of pressure, and obviously it has different sifat, so the sheen is also one of the letters of Rakhawa is one of the letters of Hams as well. But that spreading of the sound does not happen except with the sheen. Listen carefully. Ash, ash. If I were to apply tafashi, for example, on asad, which is a common mistake, I would do as. Changes the sound completely and makes it incorrect. So ash, where the sound spreads in the sad, is incorrect, as the sad does not have tafashi. The same thing with the jim. This is not a very common one, specifically among North Africans due to the French influence. So the J in French is pronounced j, j. So that sound j has an element of tafashi as well, because the sound spreads throughout the mouth. The jim in Arabic is a very strong letter. It has shidda, it has qalqala. It does not have rakhawa or hams or tafashi or any weak characteristics. That is why it would be a mistake, a very grave mistake, to say aj for the jim. It's aj, ja, ji, ju. It is not ja, ji, ju. This is the fashion. You are giving a characteristic to some letters that do not have that characteristic, and it would be completely incorrect to do. So once again, just to summarize, and it really is just as simple as that. Tafashi is the spreading of the sound throughout the mouth. It only applies with the letter sheen. If applied to other letters, it corrupts the sound and may even change it completely, making it a major mistake. So ash, sha, she, shu, ash. With the jim, you must not apply tafashi. Ya, ji, ju, aj. Not ja, ji, ju, aj. Completely incorrect. Same thing with the sad. Should be sa, si, su, as. Not sha, she, shu, as. And you can almost hear a sheen in the end. So be careful of that, specifically with the jim. There are two more characteristics, and that will be that, inshallah ta'ala. طيب. Both of the following characteristics will have something to do with the ra. So we start with the simpler of the two. Inhiraf. So linguistically, inhiraf refers to a tipping. Not a tipping that you do in the restaurant, but harf, as you know, is to do with the tip or edge. So على ومن الناس من يعبد الله على حرف. That's the linguistic meaning. It has somewhat relationship between that and the practical application. Inhiraf from a practical perspective refers to the bending of the sound around the tongue when pronunciation occurs. The only letters where this takes place are the lam and the ra. Every other letter you can think of, the sound is free to travel straight away from the vocal cords to the exit point. Even if it goes through some sort of trapping or compression on the way out, like the bud, for example, but eventually it's a clear way through. With the lam and the ra, as inshallah I'll try to demonstrate with the following diagram, because the tongue, specifically the tip of the tongue, if you remember makharij, is in contact, continuously in contact with الثنايا العليا or اللثة الثنايا العليا, the gums of the top incisors, the sound cannot travel freely outwards, but it must sort of travel around the tongue. So if you take a front view of a mouth or someone pronouncing a lam or a ra, you'll see the following. So this is the tongue. As you know, the makhraj of the lam or the ra, this can apply for either, will be somewhere hidden by the lips, somewhere here. So if that is the case and the sound is coming from the vocal cord somewhere here, the sound will not be allowed to exit freely, rather it must travel around the tongue. Yeah, that really is pretty much it. ينحرف, so انحرف عن الشيء is that it edged past it or went by it, bending around it, sort of thing, which is exactly what's taking place in the makhraj of the lam, and the same with the ra. So if you imagine that this is the tongue, the sound cannot exit freely, it must travel around the tongue either side to be pronounced, for the sound to be audible. One thing to mention, and that is with the lam, this diagram may not be incredibly suitable for someone who pronounces the lam with only one side of the tongue. As we said with the lam, you can pronounce it with all the upper tip of the tongue or with only a side, one side, as opposed to the whole side. After, let me rephrase that. You can pronounce the lam with the side of the upper tip, all of it. So from this side to that side, all of it like that, all this. Or you can pronounce it only with one side of the upper tip. So either the right side or the left side, normally the left side. So if this is the case, obviously, when you're pronouncing the lam with both sides of the upper tip. If you're only choosing one side, inhiraf would still take place, but will be more exaggerated towards one side. So instead of it being in the middle, it will be slightly bent one way or the other. So yeah, I'm sure you can imagine that I won't have to do it. So this will be relaxed, and this side will be more towards the left, or this will be relaxed, and this side will be more towards the right. The point is, the exact same phenomena is still taking place, but the sound has to travel around the tongue to escape the mouth. Let me write down the letters, because that wasn't open enough. Those are the only two letters, the ra and the lam, where this phenomenon takes place. And hopefully that's clear enough, inshallah. And that's all there is to mention regarding inhiraf. In terms of the sound exiting with the ra, there is one important note to make and one final sifa to mention. And also, it is unique from one particular respect. Every sifa that we have discussed so far, whether ones with opposites or ones without opposites, we have discussed it for the purpose of its application. That is to say, we explained a particular sifa for it to be applied when a particular letter is pronounced. The only sifa that is mentioned by the scholars of Tajweed so that you don't apply it is the sifa of tikrar or takrir. So that is this sifa that we're going to explain now is unique from that respect. It is the only sifa, it is the only characteristic of a letter that is described and mentioned by the scholars to keep away from and not apply rather than to apply, as is the case with all the other characteristics. And it is somewhat related to that which we just mentioned with inhiraf. طيب. Takrir. Takrir literally means repetition. From a practical perspective, it refers to the repetition of the sound of the ra. The ra, and we explained it thoroughly, so we're not going to go through it again, has a somewhat complex or unique makhraj in that there is a slight curvature in the tongue itself, which allows for the escaping of the sound, not just from either side, as is the case with inhiraf, which is obviously true, but also ever so slightly from the tip, through the tip itself. So let me, in terms of the contact points, we already discussed this thoroughly when we talked about the makhraj of the ra. So this is just a recap. The points in contact of the tongue with its makhraj when it's being pronounced are these. So if you imagine the tongue rolling into on itself very slightly, it would only be those two sides or those sides of the tip that are in contact, and there'd be a very small fajwa, very small gap in the tongue that would allow for the continuation of the sound to exist. Not repetition, but continuation. So if I say I'm not actually repeating the ra. I'm not repeating it, but it's just the sound is still audible. You can continue to pronounce it. Not with ease, because it's not one letters of rakhawa. Not with difficulty either, because it's not one letters shidda, but in between, because it's one letters of lin'um. You go back to characteristics with opposite if you want to review that. But the ra is one letters of bayniyya, on between. It's between rakhawa and shidda, which is why you can sort of pronounce it not indefinitely, but no with complete ease. So you can say ar. The reason you can do that is because of that gap. If this gap did not exist, then takrir would take place, or tikrar. If this gap was not to exist, and instead all of the tip of the tongue was in contact, then a continuous process would take place whereby the tip of the tongue is essentially flapping with its makhraj, shaking like that, in contact, not in contact, in contact, not in contact, creating a repetitive rolling of the tongue. That's what it's called commonly in English. So the sound that will be produced, instead of the correct ar, which you just mentioned, it would be ar. You see? With the former, there is space for the sound to escape, therefore the rolling of the tongue doesn't take place repetitively. However, if you completely trap the air, then the tongue will be forced to have this repetitive motion, causing the tikrar, which is obviously disliked in pronunciation. So let me just write this down. So hopefully that's clear, and it's incredibly closely related to the makhraj, because if your makhraj is correct, you shouldn't be you shouldn't be falling into this characteristic. If it is incorrect, whereby all of the tip of the tongue is in contact with the makhraj, then you will be forced to have tikrar or takleer. And as with all characteristics, and we did mention this with the makhraj, there is one extreme and the other extreme. So one extreme is due to this closing of the tongue. You'd have the sound ar, ara that is repetitively pronounced. The other extreme is where you have khumud, you have relaxation, excessive relaxation of the tongue, whereby barely, not even any of the tip is touching the makhraj. What ends up happening is you say ar, that's not ara, ar, that's not ara. So ar, that's the correct ra. That's the correct ra. Ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, not Ar-Rahman ar-Rahim with takreer, nor is it Ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Hopefully that's clear, and it's really just as simple as that. The only thing to highlight once again is that tikrar or takreer is the only characteristic that is mentioned to keep away from, not to apply. So you should not apply this. It was mentioned by the scholars due to the, I guess, abundance or its prevalence amongst people reciting it. It's a common mistake, so they felt the need to make it clear that this is something to keep away from, and they described it thoroughly. فَجَزَاهُمُ اللَّهُ عَنَّا خَيْرًا. And hopefully that's clear. And that is all to mention about characteristics without opposites. And with that, inshallah ta'ala, we finished the whole topic of characteristics. And we hope that it has been beneficial and understandable with not too many complexities. والله تعالى أعلم وصلى الله وسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين والحمد لله رب العالمين.